7:14 at KPEL. Welcome back to Acadiana's Morning News. It is Wingin It Wednesday, and our panelists, Warren, Caudle, are all geared up, all hopped up on Mountain Dew, apparently.
Yeah, because
I know Carol. I know Carol does not even allow Mountain Dew in her block.
No.
Okay, she tells all the neighbors, you don't even bring that near my house. Okay?
No.
Sugar, sugar, sugar.
Yes. Okay, great. So it is Wingin It Wednesday. We actually have not been all together since the runoff elections happened, since now we know who's going to Washington. Let's start there. Runoff elections thoughts as we now move forward. We talked to John Kennedy yesterday, who says he's just going to rent a room in Washington, but he's not actually going to move there. He's going to still continue to live in Madisonville. So we'll see about that. Carol, kick this one off.
Well, I thought the most interesting thing was Clay Higgins' acceptance speech. And the first thing he said when they got up there was, "What happens when a dog catches a car?" Anyway, that just really
wait.
That was great.
But wait, what's the rest? Because I mean,
no, everybody got what he meant. He's like, now what do I do? But he said, of course, he had gone up there a couple of weeks ago, which we all knew.
Yes.
And that was the line that got me in one of his speeches after he had gone to Washington to get the lay of the land, look around, and try to start getting things set up and figure out where he's going. And he said, "I went to the National Archives, and I saw our founding documents, and I dropped to my knees." The guy has a flair. I'm telling you, you could hear a pin drop when he gets into this stuff. I mean, he really does compel the audience. The question is, what does the dog do when he catches a car? I think he really understands that this is a big job, that I think he believes he's up to it. I hope he is, for all of our sakes. But if I were his, advising him, on his little shoulder, I would say, you might want to keep some of Bustani's staffers on, because some of those people stay rather apolitical and they know how to run an office. That's one thing. You want your people in there in charge, right? But the worker bees can really, really make a difference in terms of constituent service. And that's what it comes down to, really, for a congressperson. It's constituent service. And then the other thing I would do on the policy level is I'd bring Brett Guyman in as maybe an advisor or running his district office, because this guy knows where the bones are buried. He knows how to run the legislative process. He's a smart guy. He's respected, very well respected. And the other thing I thought was interesting, that the only two parishes Angel lost, won, Calcasieu and Cameron, and yet Higgins had his celebration party
there. Yes,
yes, right there.
And talked a lot about Lake Charles.
Yes,
in his
he did.
Acceptance speech.
And seemed to have a lot of support there. A lot of blue collar in Lake Charles, and I think he had a lot of support there. And when you see Angel only won his parish by 109 votes, that's got to tell you something. Yeah. So Clay Higgins, he knows he's got a big job on his hands. This is going to be the fun one. I don't know, fun, maybe that's a gallows humor term that we're talking about here, but this will be interesting to watch, to see what Mr. Higgins does. He's been a fascinating character all along, and I have to give myself a little credit. I did predict on a different radio show a month and a half ago that he would win. It raised a lot of eyebrows.
Yeah. All right, Warren, your thoughts?
First thing I want to say is, what does a dog do when he catches the car? It depends on whether or not he catches that car on the leading edge of the tire.
That's
Confucius say. That is one of Warren's imponderables here.
That has a lot to do with what happens.
Okay, Grasshopper, lay it on us.
I think we all said, I said going back months ago, who's going to win the 3rd congressional race is going to be whoever is in the runoff against Scott Angel. Mm-hmm. And Scott Angel, I do believe, represented the end of the Bobby Jindal era. And the Bobby Jindal failed politicians, the Bobby Jindal failed politics, the Bobby Jindal failed
consultants,
and his failed consultants for sure. And I said going back earlier too, and some of these, I forgot which one of the races it was, that all the negative ads that we have seen over the years, the guerrilla warfare politics, where it's go out there and character assassination. It's like a gladiator sport with these consultants, not so much with the candidates, but with those consultants who are the scourge of life in political life, and that They really should be outlawed or something. Maybe they should go chase some cars. But, I hope that this is putting an end to some of that stuff where that, it's just so vehement. They go out there and they do anything and everything they can to just try to destroy the life of their opponent. And that is so sad. That is why so many people just refuse to stand as a candidate today. And so many good people. And that I was so happy to see Angel go down to defeat. Somebody put on Facebook, said, tonight is the end of the Angel's candidacy for governor. And
but he might, according to Moon, he might run for treasurer.
Well, probably going to run for
that's
something else. And somebody put on there, Angel for dog catcher. But, Moon had it right on one deal. He called him the Wizard of Oz candidate. He said when it comes down to it, he's got no brain, he's got no heart, he's got no courage. And when you pull the curtain back, he's all mouth. And he was all talking. And I was really... I
don't think Moon
just
has
tell us how
cable
you
or
really
something.
feel.
I think he just must sit at the dining room table and get these things ready, because I don't know how that's just on the top of the head.
Well, somebody probably told him that, and he uses
stop.
that as his own, like most of us do.
But
like most of us. But look, here's one other thing, too, is you had his longtime childhood friend and all in here, Fred Mills, was talking about what a wonderful person Scott Angel is, his passion to serve, and blah, blah, blah. Not one time was he asked a question about the conflict of interest with the $350,000 a year salary with the Sunoco Logistics and sitting on the Public Service Commission and some of these other type things that, really should have been. That should have been some of the real issues in that campaign.
Yes,
that's
true.
The aspect of the sinkhole and Bayou Born,
yes.
Those things. They never was brought up.
One quick word also about the nastiness. If you watch that last debate, I mean, it was pretty obvious. Clay Higgins never really hit at Angel. He never hit at him personally.
Well, he didn't have to.
And the toughest question that he asked, and it was the kill shot, but he asked it and it was a legitimate question. Why did you not support David Vitter for governor? And if that didn't solidify a bunch of conservatives, and behind the scenes, the word is that Vitter was working hard for Clay Higgins as payback for that.
Well, that's it. Here's the deal. When it comes down to it, Higgins did not have to go negative to get attention for himself. He didn't have to push
but it also would have undercut his own biblical, his own religious thing. And actually, he said something.
I would say Donald Trump.
He said something very nice about Angel's family and all that. And what could Angel do? Come back? Well, I don't know about it. And hit him again on the child support. And it really.
Well, it kind of leaves a bad taste.
It really was.
Okay, Warren, wrap this one up and we'll move on.
But the other point you said, he didn't have to go negative. That has been a hallmark of modern day politicians is going negative pays off.
Yep.
That's what all those consultants.
And it has. Unfortunately, it has.
It has. But I hope that what we're now seeing is the death of that phrase.
All right. Wingin' It Wednesday brought to you every week by Service Cadillac. Bring home the best season with the Cadillac Season's Best event. Hey, I brought home the best of the season.
He's always bragging like that, Bernie.
Carol,
did you notice that?
Have you seen it?
He's a big old bragger, but did you see what's in the parking lot?
What I'm going to do,
I'll see
I'm going to press
I wasn't
the
quite
unlock
awake
button,
when
and you
I
can look
walked
for the
into
lights that are shining on the ground. You get the handles that have lights in them. Hey, I'll tell you about
lift
it later.
off?
What are you doing, driving
Does it
a
lift
hearse?
off?
Yeah, hers.
Beam me up, Rob.
Service has one of the largest Cadillac inventories in the state.
Pimpmobile.
15.
Stop that, Warren. Turn off his mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cadillac
Turn off his
CTS is on
mic.
the lot.
Okay, so you can go and see the Cadillac CTSs. There's all kinds of different Cadillacs there.
I know you didn't call it a hearse. I'm walking out of this show.
I didn't say that.
Hey, by the way, most of the CTSs include adaptive remote start, 20-way adjustable seats, a heads-up display, surround vision, and guess what? A 4G hotspot, so you don't use your data when you're in the car.
I love that.
Service
Wait a minute.
Cadillac.
You mean to tell me the
A
button on
remote
that thing?
start.
That's brilliant.
See,
because
I love
want
that
my air
during
conditioner to start.
I love that during the cold and the heat.
Yes.
But then the seat moves
20 ways. 20 ways.
By itself? Now that would be...
Let's just say the first few days it did it by itself. I didn't know what was
You
happening.
didn't know what was
Hey,
happening.
stay with us this morning on Wednesday coming up. Welcome back to Wingin' It Wednesday. Rob Kirkpatrick and Bernadette Lee with our panelists, Warren Caudle and Carol Ross. So there will be an investigation into those reports that Russia influenced the U.S. election. If investigators determine that it did, my question for you guys is, what's next? Is there any real recourse? Donald Trump says we don't know who did it. It's just kind of causing some issues. And also, do you believe the U.S. has influenced elections on its own in the past? Warren, start this one off.
There's nothing about believing it. I mean, we have. It's been public knowledge that we've gone around the world, not only just influencing elections, but killing off the candidates and you name it. I mean, look, first of all, I don't think Russia had one thing to do with any hacking of emails. Now, surely they gathered every email that came off that unsecured server. I mean, them and so many others. There's no question about that. We spend billions of dollars a year to gather information from foreign governments, foreign leaders, and all that. It even came out that we had tapped Angela Merkel's phones and all that. We do it. All of those, China, Russia, England, Germany, they all do that stuff. You know, this is just a failed attempt by the Democrats. Huh?
I'm shocked.
Shocked. Yeah, this is a failed attempt by the Democrats to try to somehow or another claim the illegitimacy of this election. They never denied the content of those emails. They have never denied the criminality that the Secretary of State did while she was Secretary of State. They've not denied the criminality of the Clinton Foundation and, as Rush Limbaugh says, the Clinton crime family. They've never denied any of that. So what do? They sit there and say, well, it's the Russians. The Russians were involved. Well, you know what a lot of people around here had to say over the years? Vladimir Putin is honest compared to what we have had in the White House and in Congress and in the Senate for the last several years and a few decades. You know, at least he stands up for his country and does what he thinks is best for them. That's more than what we can say for a lot of our leaders. But anyway, we got to deal in a world community. Thank God that Trump picked who he did to be Secretary of State, to pick a business person, just like Ronald Reagan did in his cabinet. You know, trying to say that Russia somehow or another hacked into some emails and influenced this election. It is absurd. I go back to the 1960s and election, and a speech that I heard a man give one time. They were talking about back then was the big nuclear umbrella that we were all threat of nuclear war, and the Soviet Union was going to bomb us at any time. You know, we used to have the air raid drills when I was in school, in elementary school, to dive under the desk and stuff, which we now know is the worst place to be when a building collapses. But he made the statement one time. He said, the guy doing his speech, I forgot his name now, but he said, Russia wouldn't dare bomb Washington and New York because they'd kill too many of their own folks. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and if you want to talk about the people who tried to unduly influence this election, look at the New York Times. Look at the mainstream media. And look at the crooked stuff that they did to try to influence this election. Thank God it didn't go through.
All right, Carol.
Yeah, there's a bulletin for you. The Russians hack, the Chinese hack, and yes, Virginia, we hack. Everybody does it, and we all know that we do it. It's just that nobody admits it publicly, but everybody knows that the hacking. Does anybody remember the Stuxnet virus? Yeah, we planted that in the Iranian nuclear program, the Stuxnet virus, to slow it down. There's no evidence that the hacking had any effect on this election, none whatsoever. And you want to talk about hacks? The split here is between the CIA and the FBI. The FBI refuses to concur with the CIA. Who's in charge of the CIA? The biggest hack of them all, John Brennan. He is nothing but a political hack. And he's the one who leaked, there's hacking and it had an effect. He's the one who had his low-level employees leak that without any justification or any evidence to back it up. Now, in terms of the GOP, the Republicans in Congress, they are posturing along with the Democrats. There have been investigations of hacking going on for over a year in two the House and the Senate Intelligence Committees. They've been investigating this with, by the way, no cooperation from the Obama administration because, of course, they were going to take care of things with the Russians. We had a reset button and all that good stuff. So there's absolutely no evidence. And the intelligence committees have been investigating this. For them to stand up there and say, we're going to get to the bottom of this. Well, they know they've been investigating this forever. So the losers are trying to influence the election. The CIA is complicit. And the report, cited by Podesta was inconclusive, leaked anonymously. And by the way, I have a question for you, apropos of who's lobbying whom. Do you think tell me this. Do you think that the Russian Duma, the members of the Russian Duma, after they get out, are allowed to lobby foreign governments the way our guys are hired by foreign governments to lobby our own government? And many of them make those votes. Over the years, they form relationships with these consultants and lobbyists and members of other governments. We have our own former senator from Louisiana and his partner, the former senator from Mississippi, who are in partnership now lobbying for the Russians, the last I heard. So I think Trump is on to something in terms of stopping that lobbying for foreign governments by retired members of the House and Senate and any administration. He is really, do we hack? Yes, we hack. Everybody hacks.
So question on this, let's just go ahead. What about the divide? Does this put a divide between Trump and the intelligence community? What do you think?
Well, it should. I mean, let's go back to President Eisenhower. Do we remember? I know Warren remembers. Not to say anything about your age, Warren, but but after World War II, when the CIA was established out of the OSS, it was Allen Dulles who was the first.
Yep.
And they had their dirty little fingers everywhere in the world. The worst one was in Indonesia when they were trying to overthrow Sukarno. Well, after that little debacle, Eisenhower never trusted the CIA after that because he felt he could not get any straight information. And I was looking up something, and there was a quote in there. They said Dulles himself came to mistrust his own people. And there was a guy that had a quote. It was a great quote, and I'm going to see if I can find it, because he said, Eisenhower received a report from his intelligence board of consultants that said the agency was, this is from their own consultants, incapable of making objective appraisals of its own intelligence information as well as its own operations. So that was way back when, from the very beginning. So I think they have a serious problem where they're in this silo and they don't share information and they don't take information, and Trump may be on to something.
You mentioned Dwight Eisenhower and Allen Dulles. That Allen Dulles was, of course, the longest-serving director of the Central Intelligence Agency. And he was also in charge of the agency during the Bay of Pigs. And Lyndon Johnson put him on the Warren Commission with the OK of J. Edgar Hoover. And many of them say that Allen Dulles was part of a plot to assassinate Kennedy. We're not going to get into those conspiracy theories, but I will say this about Eisenhower and Allen Dulles. When Eisenhower left office, he told Allen Dulles, he said, "Allen, you have left me a legacy of ashes," talking about the Central Intelligence Agency. And there's a great book that was written, and it's titled Legacy of Ashes. Talking about Allen Dulles, the foreign policy, there's another extremely good book out there called The Brothers. It's the story of Allen Dulles, who was director of CIA, and his brother, John Foster Dulles, who was the Secretary of State at the same time during the Eisenhower administration, during the 50s. And it talks about how that set the ground for our foreign policy today, which was indeed meddling in the affairs of foreign nations, going in there and assassinating people, having a really heavy hand to try to give favoritism to our corporations and to go in there and actually colonize a country without calling it that, which is really what we did in so many cases. And it's a great book to read, and I think it's insightful, it's good, and it's not all bad about America, but it really does tell you the real story about foreign policy and how it developed.
So Trump is not really out there that far out when he mistrusts the CIA.
The deal is that, that some of them are out of control. And you look at the CIA, that they had a guy named James Angleton, who was the director of counterintelligence, and his job there was trying to find a mole that they were told that was in the CIA, that the Soviet Union had a plan in there, and he just basically said that everybody there was a communist spy, and some of them rightfully so, but they overlooked the real one, which was Aldrich Ames. But he also made one startling revelation, and he said Averell Harriman, who was the ambassador to the Soviet Union back in the 40s and 50s, was, in his eyes, a communist spy.
Wow. Gosh, a lot of history there. We're going to take some of your phone calls, 232-1542, 232-1542. Let's get a break in real quick. We will keep you, we'll answer them as they come in as well, and take your calls in the next segment. This is Wingin' It Wednesday, brought to you by our friends over at Service Cadillac. Stay with us. All right, Wingin' It Wednesday, every Wednesday at 7 a.m. You can also watch us live Don't do it while you're driving, though. You can listen to us live in the car.
Right.
But don't do it while you're driving. But if you're at work, you can watch us live. You know, our hair and makeup department really take care of Carol and Lauren when they get in.
They told me they put this. I said, that's why I do radio.
I will tell you this. It's getting some comments this morning. Patrick on our Facebook feed says, Higgins was needed on the ground, though, in our community, not in Congress. Seems like he's a fan of what he's been doing here. Maybe could help here. Maybe a little bit weary of what was going to happen in Washington. So we'll see.
Let's all wait and see about everything.
So you said you had one more blurb, then we're going to get to a couple calls.
Well, you know, apropos of that hacking, I have a CPA friend who finds, I mean, you know, you got to love that CPA stuff. He sent me something that was really an interesting analysis about the Electoral College. So he said, you know, there's a perfect example why the founders formed the Electoral College. To wit, there are 3,141 counties in the United States. Trump won 3,084 of them. Clinton won 57. There are 62 counties in New York State. Trump won 46 of them. Clinton won 16. Of course, it's the one with the population. So she won the popular vote by approximately 1.5 million votes. But in those 5 counties in New York State that she won alone, she received over 2 million more votes than Trump.
Wow.
So those 5
That's
counties
yeah.
alone more than accounted for Clinton winning the popular vote of the entire country.
Yeah.
And those 5 counties comprise 319 square miles. The rest of the country comprises almost 4 million square miles. So when you have a country that comprises almost 4 million square miles of territory, it's kind of ridiculous to think that those 319 square miles would...
But it also really needs to be pointed out how many of those votes were fraudulent. How many dead people voted?
Well, of course. It's New York.
But not just in New York. But they said something like between 2 and 3 million just in California alone.
Yeah, but that's been debunked, though.
That has not been debunked.
Oh, yes, it has. That's not real. It's more of that 2 to 3 million number is from the census, right?
Time out. California, a while back, allowed anybody with an ID, including illegal immigrants, to vote in state and local...
Yeah, but there's no way that we know that number, though.
State and local elections.
We didn't give a specific number.
2 to 3 million?
And they know that many of them were allowed to vote because it's up to who? The commissioners in that polling place.
Yeah.
If you remember when
it still seems kind of hypothetical.
Well,
though.
when you saw James O'Keefe go into a Washington, D.C. polling place, and he said, my name is Eric Holder. This was when Eric Holder was head of the Justice Department, right? Attorney General.
Yep.
My name is Eric Holder. And he said, I want to vote here. This is where I vote. And they looked up his name. Well, that was his voting precinct. And they asked for no ID or anything like that. He didn't vote because that would have been illegal. Yep. But he did prove that they would have let him vote. So we don't know the extent
we don't know
that's the deal.
That's all I'm saying. We don't know the extent. That number was widely seen as the big audit of registration. How many people were still registered? There's no way to prove who all voted, especially this quick.
But Rob, you have to admit, when you have a state like California allowing people who they know are illegal to vote in,
I know.
They say limited only to state and local. But I'm sorry, how do you police that?
But
look, here's the real deal.
The state of Texas, you don't need an ID either.
But look, but here's the real deal. If you go back, Louisiana was one of the most corrupt political places going. Huey Long won in Plaquemine Parish with Leander Perez was there. He got 4,000-something votes out of Plaquemine Parish. And that was a pretty good feat considering there's only 1,200 registered voters in the entire parish. And when you look at some of these places and these inner cities and whatever where you have the old political boss total rule, and you go in there and there's precinct after precinct after precinct that voted more people than they had registered, and they vote 100% for one candidate, you're going to tell me that's not fraudulent?
Oh, no.
Of course it is. And you're going to tell me it doesn't need to be looked into? Of course it does. And any of these people going to sit out there and tell me that we need to change the voting apparatus in this country to go strictly on those places to elect a president? I say no.
Well, I give kudos to our system here because in Louisiana we do.
Yeah, you have to have an ID.
We have a very good system here. Tom
you
Shedler does
I'll
a
tell you this. When I moved out of Louisiana, the first place that I lived where you didn't, I was like, but it doesn't make, why not? You know, it didn't even, I never even knew that was a possibility. Let's get to a couple of our phone calls. We have Joey, on line one. Hey, Joey, sorry for the bit of a delay, but we had a bit of a spat. Can you go ahead with your question or comment?
Good morning. Yes, two things I want to say. The Barack Hussein Obama statement about elections have consequences And also, Barack Hussein, when he tried to interact in the Israel elections.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
His people were over there actively campaigning against Netanyahu.
So we have a caller on line 2.
Michael?
This is Michael. Good morning, Michael. Go ahead with your question or comment.
Yeah, we got a question for the panel. Can Trump have himself sworn in at 12:01 a.m. in Trump Towers on January 20th, and then begin canceling out all the executive orders until he can see Obama, Hussein, Barack eye to eye during the official ceremonies, and then cancel all of the balls and all
That's
of
an
the
interesting
BS
question.
because he doesn't owe anybody anything? Can he cancel all that stuff and save us a little bit of money?
Okay, thank you. I will say that so we do know that the inauguration is widely paid for by donors, and there are people who raise the money for the balls and for all that sort of thing
But
as well.
he's posing a
But
technical question.
He's posing the technical question. Could he just avoid all the pomp and circumstance, cancel everything? Is he saying before he goes to D.C. and has to shake hands?
What I think he's saying is do it secretly at Trump Tower, start issuing all the reversals of and then go to the
Executive orders, and then go to the
inauguration.
inauguration.
And,
I'll tell you
and
this.
look Obama in the eye and say, hey, buddy.
I think primary Trump, yes. General election Trump and President-elect Trump, no.
By the way, we haven't talked about Tillerson either.
Oh, we have not. Okay, let's take a break. We're going to come back. Let's talk about Tillerson and some of the other
Boeing.
picks.
Yeah.
All right, stay with us. Wingin' It Wednesday brought to you by Service Cadillac. Stay with us. This is Acadiana's Morning News.
Oh, my God.
Hey, 7:52. Miss Ross, this is the radio, and when we turn the mics on,
Put
the
your
music
hands up.
goes
Yeah,
off.
but you don't warn me.
I'm sorry. Okay, so we have a couple
the
big
language
things.
changes.
A couple biggies we have to contend with. Iran and their Boeing deal. Guess what? Did you hear that this morning in Bernie's newscast? They also have an Airbus deal that's going to happen this week, too.
yeah.
Another huge one.
Yes.
Try to tell me those aren't going to become military planes. What does
can't.
Iran need all these planes for?
I can't.
Anyway, go ahead.
Because I've been researching this, and they've had sources all over the place who don't want to go on record, but they're all saying this is insane. An American company is rebuilding the Ayatollah's Air Force right before our eyes. They're not just selling aircraft; they are cutting the Iranians into the production process. This is the part that bothers me. They get into the production process; they can figure out, all the latest technology that we're putting into those planes. And they can be adapted, and it's a multi-platform thing. It's not just the airliners. There's some military
Boeing
implications.
makes military planes too.
It does. And the guy said basically this is the equivalent of setting up a factory to build Sherman tanks in Munich in 1938.
Wow, Warren.
Which we almost did in 1938 because we had a lot of people in this country who were great admirers
Of Hitler, including Lindbergh.
Henry Ford, John F. Kennedy, old man Joseph Kennedy.
Joe Kennedy.
And the list goes on and on. Franklin Roosevelt, probably one of them, and the list goes on and on. This deal about Iran and selling airplanes to them, it's absolutely ridiculous to be opposed to that. We need to be trading with people. We need to be trading with those people. Clinton administration gave top secret clearances to some people from the Chinese government and to deal with industrial, with military.
L'Oreal
secrets
missile guidance technology. They
and
sold
all
it.
that stuff. But, you're not going to make military planes out of commercial airliners. What are you going to do, turn them into bombers?
No, that's not the point. The point is they get
thing you can do with those to make military planes with them is load them up with fuel and fly them into buildings and stuff. Look, we're going to be a lot better off if we're trading with people than we are if we're trying to isolate them. And that's what I agree with Ronald Reagan on so much. And I'm totally opposed to those sanctions against Iran, against Russia, against Cuba, against anybody. Because all it does is it emboldens the one you're trying to hurt, and it hurts the ones you're trying to help. And the ones we're trying to help are those people. I've had friends that have been to Iran. I've got friends who are from there. I know diplomats from other countries who've been there, and they said the biggest mistake we have made is not being friends with Iran. So the Iranian people love
The Iranian
America.
people love us, but the mullahs
but
don't.
The problem is that
and they are the
between our
biggest state
diplomats,
sponsor of
between our
terrorism,
people
Warren.
in government and those governments, they see the countries as the government.
This will include a technology transfer that we don't want to do.
You think
You're
they
railing
can't
against
get
the Clintons
planes right
about
now from Russia.
you're
from China,
railing against the
from
Clintons for
anywhere they want
transferring
them?
technology to the Chinese. This is the same darn thing.
You think they can't get that stuff from Russia? They're buying them. Who cares?
They can't get our technology.
Ronald Reagan also had the philosophy: you arm everybody to the teeth, and that way they're afraid to mess with anybody.
No, we arm ourselves to the teeth and stop
We
arming
are
everybody
armed to
else.
the teeth, you know, and you tell me the last time that Iran went outside,
Not
sent
according to the
military
generals
outside
right
of their
now.
border. Tell me, when the last time they sent the military outside of their border?
They send their surrogates outside their border. That's the whole
Surrogates
point.
is different than the military.
They're supporting.
send
They
our
are
military
sponsoring these
outside
people.
of our
They
border.
are the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. They send people all over the world
So
That's
this
the biggest misnomer
assassinating.
that's ever
Oh,
been
please,
said.
Warren.
I will
You're
say this,
confusing the
obviously-
wonderful Iranian people and that beautiful Persian culture with the mullahs who are in charge now.
I will
Not
say
the same thing.
This is a problem that will fall on the desk of the new Secretary of State. We do know Max Tillerson, ExxonMobil. Warren, thoughts on him?
An absolutely superb choice. Superb choice. Just goes back to what Ronald Reagan did. Who did he make Secretary of State? Was George Shultz. Who was George Shultz? He was the youngest Marine major, supposedly, in World War II. He ran a construction company, which was, I forget the name of it now, but it's
Bechtel.
one of the big ones. Yeah, Bechtel, and one of the big ones, and came out of the industry. He had worldwide connections, and that was badly boo-hooed by a lot of the...
He was one of the most successful secretaries of state.
And he also put a business person in there, as Secretary of Defense, who was Caspar Weinberger, which is probably one of the best ones we had.
All right.
Kara, what do you think? What do you think
okay.
about this one?
Rex
Right on
Tillerson, I totally agree. First of all, if you think of the State Department as the governmental equivalent of a multinational corporation, they have branches all over the world. They have a huge bureaucracy. They have been missing money. We have talked about this before. They have not had anybody in charge who knew how to run a major department like that. Rex Tillerson is... Donald Trump is an asymmetrical thinker. If you look at his cabinet, it's a balance of insiders and outsiders. Rex Tillerson may end up being a brilliant choice, as Schultz was. Absolutely. I'm in favor of that. I think the guy knows what he's doing. I think he has connections, and I think he can turn that State Department around. What they call it, foggy bottom.
All right, with
for
that,
a reason.
With that, Wingin' It Wednesday brought to you by Service Cadillac every week. You could watch this entire segment at kpel965.com a little bit later on this afternoon. Go Cajuns.